Please come to order. Welcome to our March 8th budget work session, a follow-up, and actually we got some pretty important people here to discuss today, and I'm sure that we're going to be taken care of. So I'm going to turn it right over to Ms. Cudmore, our financial authority here in the county.
All righty.
You got it.
Thank you, Commissioners. And I also have with me Jody Kwasny, my Deputy Director. So today, you know, we went through and got a lot accomplished last week. So I thank you for that. And so the direction that I'll need today, we're going to go through the elected officials request, and then we're also going to go through vehicles. So that's kind of where the direction I would like to have at the end of the day, if not, you know, another meeting. And then, of course, we do have the Planning Commission meeting on Monday. So we're going to take our CIP, the package, I think you guys got a copy of that, and we'll take that to the Planning Commission and go over it with them and then bring their approval back at a following budget work session.
Okay.
So we're going to start on page 1, and this is really a recap of where we left off last week. So you can see the available balances are up top. You know, there have been no FTEs approved at this point because we're really starting to get into the operating with the elected officials and the county departments next week. And that's where you'll start seeing any FTEs that have been approved. So we started off with a fund balance of $25 million that you can use, which maintains your revenue to ratio percentage at 15%. And then we have our general fund revenue prior to the PAYGO, and then your general expense. And from there, you can see the first line row underneath that is where we've already used to balance the CIP, $13 million, and that reduces your fund balance. And then you'll see in the next column for the revenue, that becomes a revenue source. So that's why that revenue is that $13 million is there. And then the PAYGO that goes to the CIP fund is an expense. So that's why you'll see that as a number there, okay? Other revenues estimated, I did go back, Commissioner Hewitt, and I looked at that recordation tax.
All right, thank you.
And I was able to add that $1.8 million to it.
Thank you.
Okay, and then so I looked at other revenues too at the same time. So with that, I added about $2 million to the revenues. But as I was looking at revenues, you know, I'm riding up and down the highway, and I just saw those little prices increase for fuel. Kind of got my head started, and talking to Brandon, we looked at last year's contract, and we looked at the price for last year, which was for March 1st last year, and then compared it. And then we also pulled up, and the information that I'm talking about is in your reference materials. We looked at the where the prices were in Maryland, the average prices. And last week, I think it was $3.67 for fuel, and then it was even higher or whatnot for diesel. So, and then of course, riding to work yesterday, and then I really thought they were going to increase it again this morning when I came to work. It was $4.19, up and down $2.35. Yes.
It's $4.49.
$4.49 where?
Right here in Leonardtown and down in the 7th District.
And I didn't stop this morning to get gas. I knew I should have. It'll probably be that way when I go home. But anyway, I looked at the baseline, and I updated your fuel expense, about $838,000 for auto fuel and about $248,000 for heating fuel, because the prices and the requests that we received from the departments and the elected officials, they came in January, before all of those increases and all that happened, and the budgets were not adjusted for fuel at all. They were still the same budget that was in the 22. So it's like I knew that wasn't going to work. So, and even also looking at where we are now in FY22, there are some budgets that I'm going to have to call in departments and say, okay, we need to adjust it because you're not going to have enough money for 22. Yeah. So I'll work with them to kind of go over their internal for FY22, but I highly recommend that you increase what I had proposed, the $1,086,000 for your fuel for next year. And then if it's not needed and things calm down, then we can also go back and take it back and put it in a Commissioner Emergency Reserve.
What's your recommendation on fuel for next year? An increase of how much?
$838,000, and that's over the departments and the elected officials. That's broken out for them right now, increasing it based on the current prices.
So rather than taking that out of operating, I'll throw this out there as possible that we could use the 23 ARPA funding to do that, since we are going to be looking at it to see if it's going to adjust. It would fall into the government operations category.
Well, there really isn't that kind of money available in the 22 ARPA.
Well, no, the
I mean, this
23.
is recurring anyway, so.
So
But this is going to be recurring. This is,
is it going to be recurring? Because are we going to be looking at it to see if there's going to be the market adjustment that may follow?
right. Well, I'm just proposing that we use it right now out of the operating, because I did add the $2,043,000.
And I tend to agree with you, because I think there's a lot of things in our ARPA money for '23 already, and I don't know where exactly it sits, but I know we were almost out of money for '22.
Yes.
I know that we had to move things around in '23 to get to '22, and vice versa to balance ourselves out. So recognizing that we have money in our operating budget now, rather than using the ARPA money, which could be used for, whatever the things are out there that have been sort of already spoken for, that we use that money now, but instead of using the $800,000, I use $1 million as a round number.
Okay, even not the ARPA funding, just looking at the operating. I mean, based on the premise that the gas prices fluctuate, and there is the possibility they can go down or they could go up, rather than taking money out of operating, couldn't we create a gas, take money out of fund balance, set it aside for any increases in that?
Well, this is really recurring. We think
It's only recurring if you make it recurring. So, I mean, if you set $1 million aside, then for any emergency expenses, like you're going back and adjusting the budget for the previous one, right? So that was a recurring expense, and it's going to have to be adjusted. So what I mean is make it like a contingency for it, and saying that, it is going up, it could come down, but you could also address that market fluctuation within the next budget cycle, treating this more as an emergency, because the reason these prices are going up is directly due to a conflict.
I
right.
think then we would just readjust the amount for fuel in the next budget process, next
Right.
budget cycle.
You would look at it, you would say,
Yeah.
okay, where are we at this time next year?
But
And you can say,
Can we
adjust
back
it.
up page 1 here? Your
Yes.
baseline adjustment for fuel, you have $1,086,000.
Yes.
Help me understand that number, because I
Okay,
explained it, but it
right.
just-
If you go back, we can go back to the reference material if you
Okay.
want, and that's on page 59 and 60.
Okay.
So I got some information from our procurement office, and you can see on page 59, if you start at the top, we had the delivered cost of heating fuel. This time last year, it was a 1.9. And then now, as of March 1st, it's 317.
So real quick, page 60, the
It's your
838
answer.
and the 248 put
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
That's what I was looking for.
Oh,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
You're good, you're good.
So you can see the calculations
Yep.
and show where I'm coming up. And then these are all the different departments that I increased, because they're really the departments that have the fuel. Principally, Highways has got the fuel, and you can see the Sheriff's Office has an increase being proposed. And realistically, I think this is something we can look at next year. If the prices do happen to go down and we don't need the monies, then we can always sweep it, just like we can move it back to your Commissioner's Emergency Reserve, or leave it in there because something else, just because fuel's going up, the food's going up. Everything is related to all of the fuel. So there may be other accounts that we may need to look at because of the fuel and supply
Well,
and
the
demand.
president spoke a couple hours ago, and the fuel went up $2 a barrel more, just with this president's speech.
I think what you suggested is the proper.
You're cutting Russia's oil off.
Right, and leave that in there. And also something you might want to think about, I don't know, but because of the impact of the fuel or anything else that may be going on, you may consider, just to be prepared, since we do have this excess revenue right now of $9.4 million, we're going to apply it and use it for the requests that are in this package. But it may be something that you might think about, that you may want to even increase your Commissioner's Emergency Reserve, just to be prepared for any changes. I just don't have that crystal ball that's going to know, nor does anybody else in this
Who
country
does?
or world at this point to know where we're going to be. So just something to think about. But I definitely know that fuel needed to be increased based on just driving to work.
I'm sure with our fuel contracts, we have a cutoff when it's a certain point they can increase their
Well,
cost.
and we're already starting to get
Already
phone
over top
calls
that
from our
already.
contractor.
Right.
And that's also explained on page 59. They can call us, and there can be like a 60-day notice
Right.
where they can get out of the
You can just
contract.
cancel the contract, yeah.
And then if that happens, we can renegotiate a new price that's going to be based on market, or we have to put an RFP out, and that's going to be a higher price. So we know whatever happens, yes, we have a good price now, but that's not going to last.
No.
Yeah, I think that goes to my point, whether we keep this as operating or not, which it sounds like that's the direction people want to go, that with the trending costs, this is on the contract rate. So we're going to have to do something in order to prepare for that, whether it's transferring money from fund balance to the emergency reserves or to prepare for this. And I think that was sort of my point on not putting it in the operating, taking away from the services and preparing for it, knowing for the market adjustments. But I see the argument for the operating. But either way, I think it needs to be a package deal that, since we haven't got that notification yet, that there is other funding that's set aside,
Right.
As a part of this.
And as we go through the budget process, if we, learn of anything else, I mean, we might even want to look at electric. I know there's an increased surcharge that's being added, I think, for the SMECO that's coming forward, and we haven't seen that yet probably in these current bills. I think I got it in my bill yesterday at home. It kind of went up. But then just keep in mind, looking at your funding. So do I have consensus to keep the $1,086,000 in there for fuel increases at this time?
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
All right, so also direction we received last week for the OPEB, we reduced the $4,088,000. That's because we're going to use the funding from the trust. I'm going to try to come back with a policy on when we can, use the funds from the trust and, what to look for. And also, we're going to be getting a report from our Bolton, our actuarial, at the next meeting to provide more insight on that. You approved the Board of Education at $6,098,000. The 5.2 for the negotiated agreement and $800,000 for their transportation. You also approved the county, the 2% COLA and the 1 step for the county employees.
Is that about 4.5% then?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. And then that brings us down to our total balances right now. So you can see, still on page 1, fund balance, we're at $11.9 million. Our revenues is at $306 million, and our current expense is at $296, which brings you current funding available of $9.4 million.
And that 9.4 does not include the ARPA funds.
No, it does not, because that's already been allocated. We've got the revenue already in here, and we've got the expense. So that is nothing else that would be available for ARPA, because the 11 will be allocated, and I think I'll bring that update on the next ARPA on April 12th.
Good.
Ms. Cudmore, someone who used to be in fuel, in a situation like we're in now, we should recommend to our departments who buy in bulk, whether it be the sheriff or the Board of Ed, whoever, that they keep their tanks full.
Right, okay.
Don't let them get,
The condensation or something?
No, not at all. The thing is, the pressure is going to be for prices to go up.
Okay,
And what you don't want to do is say, I usually buy when I'm at a quarter tank. Situations like this, when you're in this kind of environment, you want to buy before you get to half a tank.
okay,
Keep your volumes up, because it takes away any big increases which we're seeing. We're seeing big increases almost daily, if definitely weekly. And what this allows us to do is keep a little bit of hedge. It's all about being a little bit smarter, and allows us to, okay, we bought that gas before it went up, or we bought that diesel before it went up. So if we have a mentality that we normally buy when the tank's at a quarter tank, because I know we have tanks over here at
Right.
different places. And the point is that if we can change that to buying at a half a tank, I think we'll save money in the long run, at least until Russia figures out what it does and we go wherever we go. But for the foreseeable future, I think that'll be a wise way to.
no, I appreciate that advice.
In essence, dollar cost averaging our gas tanks.
That's right.
No, it's always been like this. When the price is going up, keep your tank full.
Right,
When the price is going down, keep your tank empty.
So
It's all about taking advantage of the pricing.
a timely notification from the Hill. The U.S. just banned the import of Russian oil. So.
That was the president's.
Yeah,
That's the
it's
reason
going to be.
Oil went up to $3 a gallon.
Yeah, so they put out the official thing, so the causation behind that. So we're definitely going to have to take some sort of action.
Yeah, and we're doing it, so
Yeah.
that's what this is for. And we'll keep an eye on it, and I appreciate, but it just amazes me, all the gas stations were all the same price this morning, and I know they all didn't get a delivery, so I guess they're all in, I guess
They push an electronic button and just change it, that's all they do.
they're doing it, yeah.
Yeah, they're
just
making a little
waiting for
extra
that
money
next
off all-
delivery. So
yeah.
they average out their
Yeah.
monies too. So thank you. So let's go on to page 2. So this is the revenues, and this reflects the increased revenues that I had proposed the prior. So like I told you last week, we kind of do a preliminary revenue estimate, and then the departments will put their revenues in their request, and then after they do their revenues, I kind of go back and take a second look. So that's exactly what I did. Property taxes, it was reduced by about $2,000 because we had tax sale revenue in 2 different places, and so I reduced them one. So that was really nothing. You're still at the 3.7%. Other local taxes, that actually increased by about $1.8 million, and a large part of that was for the recordation tax. No change in the highway user because we don't change that until we get the next letter from the MDOT. Permits actually increased. I think that might have been about maybe 200,000 or 300,000. I think I might have increased it, licenses and permits. Total for charges for services, I increased the 911 fees. That also had an increase. And then other revenues, I actually decreased that. That was for, we had our interest income, we're just not receiving any. So I kind of cut that back to where, closer to where we were the actual 2021 until things change. So that brings our revenues up to the 306 million. Okay? So it's actually a 3.6%, 6.03%. And then without fund balance, it's an increase of 5.5%. So now we're going to turn over to expenses, and I think Jody's going to take it from here.
Okay, turning to page 3, we have our expenditure summary, and today we're discussing the elected officials. So if you move down the page to the blue highlighted rows, going across from left to right, the first 2 columns are our prior year information for reference, and then the next column are baseline requests. As a reminder, this is the department's last year approved budget, less non-recurring costs, plus any cost changes. And as Jeanette mentioned, that the fuel accounts that she adjusted are in that baseline number. And then moving to the right are essential cost change requests. This is basically their budget request for 2023. Then moving over to the county administrator recommended budget. The majority of the recommended budget items included in here are positions or software that are required due to Maryland legislative mandates, career progression costs, and continuation or purchase of essential software.
So I'd like to go ahead and propose that I approve of the county treasurer budget. That looks good to me.
Right. And I will.
Controversial.
Gee, that's nice of you.
Exactly.
It's
That's
extremely.
really, it's extremely important. I
And
needed
I'll
that.
let you know that Treasurer Christy Kelly was here earlier, and I told her she didn't have to stay since she
That's
didn't
good.
ask for anything. But she did come over, and she wanted to say hello, but she had work to get done, so, she was here. But exactly, she had no additional increases.
But quite frankly, I'd support the orphans court request too, 3 chairs.
I agree.
I agree.
And normally, you had said in the past years that, furniture and that kind of stuff, but their budget is so small, they don't have any realignment of, to allow for that.
I don't see a problem with the circuit court request either. Is it 83?
So the chairs for the orphans court, that would come out of fund balance?
Yes, so if you want to go back to where, Jody, the detail is, what page does that start for the
Yeah,
commissioners?
starting on page 4, we have the same type of report, same format. We just have it listed out in detail. Of course, the blue is what we're currently looking at. The green is the detail of the county administrator budget. And then the circuit court starts on
9.
page 9. And then next to the request, there's a skinny column I put in FN. That's what we can use to purchase via fund balance. So for the circuit court, the $7,500 for the new furniture would be purchased out of fund balance. They do have a second request, which is to convert hourly case manager to full-time.
And we do have some of our elected officials or representatives here. I know Judge Stamm is here. If you would like to have anybody come up, just let us know.
I mean, I don't have a problem with the conversion due to the uptick that's in the circuit court and the cases that they're handling coming down the pipe. I think they have a wave that's catching up to the system right now from the closures, so I can understand the request.
Commissioner, it's a tidal wave.
Yeah,
Excuse me?
It's a tidal wave.
Okay.
a tidal wave, yes.
Have you decided to open up for court yet again?
What's that?
Are you having
Why
court
don't we
again?
invite him up so you can,
Judge, if you want to come up, then, I mean, this way you have a microphone and,
Shouting across the room. I'm looking to see you guys anyway.
Might have to grab that microphone, sir.
Okay. So what I said is we have a tidal wave, Commissioner, is that we, for example, today, just this morning, I did 27 cases. And when I leave you, I'm going to go right back and start doing more cases. We opened up again today, actually yesterday, for jury trials, and we are going to try to do as many as 3 jury trials a week. And of course, we only have 2 full-time judges right now, but I have Judge Densford has been gracious enough to come in. And the great thing about it is, starting this week, we were able to stop using the drill hall for choosing juries after meeting with Dr. Brewster. So it's been a, I keep wondering why I don't retire, but at any rate,
You're too young.
You're just too young.
you can visit me anytime you want to visit.
So, Judge, for the public's knowledge, could you explain what the hourly case manager does?
tell us what that does.
So what that is every single case, now we do roughly 800 criminal and juvenile cases, a couple thousand civil cases, guardianships, guardianship monitoring. Anyone who has a guardianship that's established, we have to do an annual review, and sometimes as much as twice a year. Adoptions and other things. The case manager's job is to, when a hearing is being set, to make sure that that hearing notice goes to the appropriate parties. So not every case needs a summons or a warrant. So once you're involved and the jurisdiction's established, their role is to send to each and individual person who's involved in the case a notice, if you will, of when their hearing is, what time there is. Because of COVID, we stopped doing just 3 dockets a day. We used to do 9 o'clock, 11, and then 1:30. Now what we do is a sliding scale. So I might have 3 cases set at 9, 3 cases 9:15, and it's their role to make sure that that notice goes to all the parties, the attorneys, the people involved in it.
So who's handling this caseload before? What this person would do, who was doing that work before?
Originally, we had 2 people doing it, but unfortunately, as our caseload has increased, we've never asked for another position. I had a two-day one that I did, I think, 2 years ago with you all. But what it is that we have such an influx of new cases that, frankly, they're buried. It's not uncommon for them to do 200-300 cases.
Tell me, it would be reasonable to think that the pandemic has kept your caseload down, and now that I'm sorry, I'm not trying to
Yeah, I know.
pick a fight with you. I'm just trying to say, it seems like when we were closed courthouses and we weren't doing things like that, you would have a backup. That's what I'm trying to say.
But see, that's the misnomer that so many people have, is that we were closed. The only thing that we truly stopped doing was jury trials. Okay. So during the pandemic, I never had a week off during the pandemic outside of my vacation. So what we would do is, instead of 2 cases at 9 o'clock, we'd do 1 case at 9, 1 case at 9:30, in order because of social distancing.
Right.
But in the meantime, with the population growing in the community, more cases coming, and frankly, there's been many cases that have to be continued at the last minute because of COVID protocol and procedures where they couldn't come in because they're quarantined.
Well, let's just say COVID fouled up a lot of things.
It did.
So I guess where I'm going with my question is to say that should be smoothing out and getting back to normal, would you say?
Somewhat. because we are having an increase in the number of cases coming in, COVID isn't the only variable that's causing us to have the need this employee. So frankly, I think last year we did 2,200 civil, non-domestic, and domestic cases. This year, we're on track to maybe do almost 3,000.
Okay.
So, and to give you an example, I hate to use this example because it's pretty obnoxious, actually, but go to the Baynet. Every time you see a car accident, at some point, we're going to see that car accident. Because if anyone's injured in it, they're going to add to our caseload. So a tort action. So, I mean, I usually do each week between 6 and 15 schedulings for new trials. So, and these,
Well, I don't have any trouble supporting your,
oh, I know that, Mike.
I'm just trying to ask you how it works.
You know, it's, I wasn't joking when I said, sometimes I wonder, should I retire? Because I look at our numbers, and frankly, what I'm going to be asking the AOC next year is for another judge.
Come on.
Yeah.
You haven't got the third one yet.
Well, we have a third one who's coming in who's retired. So Judge Densford is retired but comes in almost every single day.
Well, when do you get your new one?
Whenever the governor decides, not being
They don't
flippant.
have no idea when that'll happen.
Now, traditionally, they don't seem to pick a judge during the legislative session. They usually
Okay.
wait till afterwards.
Okay.
And in fact, the furniture that we all were talking is
Right.
in this year's budget, but I'm not comfortable that we'll have somebody by July 1st, so that's why we asked for it again.
Okay,
And of course, you guys know how I am about the budget. I keep it pretty flat as much as I can.
thank you.
Thank you.
You're one of the
Well,
few
I'm a
elected
taxpayer,
officials that
too.
agrees to that.
What's that?
You're one of the very few elected officials that agrees to that.
Well, it's because I pay taxes and I live on the water. Are you kidding?
Thank you for that, too.
You know where I live. So. It's, I'm actually very, very proud of how our staff has handled the last 2 years. I'm very proud of our county employees, the state employees that work for me. I just think it's been
Good to hear.
they've had a long haul. And I have to tell you, I'm going to shout out to Art Shepard. That man really went above and beyond to help us when we had, we still did a lot of jury trials last summer till we shot down again in December. And he gave us the opportunity to do it at the drill hall.
Well, I had to miss this morning, but we talked about Steerhorn Neck Road and Sodley Road. You should have been here for that.
Not everybody knows where I live, yeah.
Oh, he just told on, he just told you, he just told.
And I see. No, we're fine. Anyway,
Good thing your 5-digit isn't listed in here.
I know. Anyway, I hope that answers your question, Commissioner.
You answered his question. I think you did. Thank you, sir.
well,
Anything else, commissioners?
No?
Do we have any direction on this?
I think go forward with the circuit court as far as I'm concerned.
And the orphans court.
Yeah.
And then go back to work.
Yeah. I think go down to the sheriff,
Okay,
state's attorney.
thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right.
So we got circuit court out of the way,
Yep.
orphans court out of the way,
Treasurer.
So that's our first FTE.
treasurer out of the way.
Yeah, the treasurer, she's out of the way, so our first FTE, yay. Thank you. And of course, the way Jody's got it categorized, you can see in that one column at the F is there, we can use fund balance for it. Okay, all right.
So we're still on page 9. We'll start with the sheriff's office. And
Sure.
then we do have the backup for any request following this schedule.
Would you like somebody to come up from the sheriff's office?
Well, we'd like to know first off,
Okay,
typically, we give the sheriff about 20% of our budget.
right.
Okay, I know it's 19 to 20.
19, yeah.
And the number we're looking at in revenue it was around 15 million.
Right, exactly.
All right, so if we adopted the idea that we were going to do another 20% to the sheriff's, seemed like that would come in around $3 million.
I think I calculated maybe around 2 of what was the recurring. But anyway.
Okay, we'll get
Whatever.
back to your recurring number. What was it? 29, 28?
No. Hold on, honey. I think I put that.
To factor in the raises that we've already agreed upon for them, too.
Well, I guess my thought
Anyway, I mean,
process
it's
is just
your
give him a
decision what the amount is.
set amount and let him spend it where he needs to, instead of going through all this list of
Right,
does he need or doesn't he need. Look, these are elected officials that have their own constituency, And as long as they're doing the job, and I'm happy with the job they're doing, then I think it's not for us to say you need, I mean, there's a lot of detail on here, and I don't know if it's my job to tell them what particular thing they need or don't need. I'd rather just give them a percentage of the money we typically give them. Hopefully that's enough, and let them spend it where they think they need it.
Right, and when we came in last week and we started off with the 12.7 million, that was before we kind of went forward with what we made. That was about 2.4 of the non-grant.
So that gets them in around 2.5, 2.6, and if they figure that's not enough, they can come back later and say, that's not enough. That way we don't get into telling people what they need to spend it on, because again, they have people who elect them. The sheriff's elected.
Exactly. So I can tell you right now that the essential cost changes, they total about 2.2 million. If you look at page 10, for all their ECCs.
And we're talking 2.4?
So that's, so I would,
Well, then let's bring them up and see if 2.4 is enough.
I think that would be the greatest Christmas present they've ever seen.
No.
That would be the best ever. That's like,
Well, I mean,
Merry
you got it.
Christmas. Merry Christmas. My
that kind of
gosh.
exceeds.
Even Americans laughing at that.
But Sheriff Cameron, are you available to come up?
My only question is, I want to know what this civilian duty officers are. I might want to apply for a new job next year. I don't know. I want to see what this is.
I think it's shift work.
No shift work?
It is shift
Oh, it is shift work. Oh, my God, I don't want that then.
And holidays.
No holidays either? Oh, my
shift
gosh.
work and holidays.
That sounds terrible.
So do you want specific information on the civilian duty officers?
Well, I just asked, but I just wondering what that is. Yeah.
I just want to know if 2.4 is enough to do what you want to do.
Well, I certainly would go back and crunch the numbers with staff and come back and, I mean, it sounds pretty solid to me to do what we need to be done, but I'd want to crunch it with staff and come back in, see if we could do a little better.
Here comes your cruncher.
Uh-oh.
Well, let's let her get closer.
Come on up, Lottie. But like I said, if you look at page 10, their total ECCs total 2.282, so the 2.4 would exceed.
Now, would that include the Merit and COLA? Are we absorbing that in that as well?
Well, that's what we need to understand, because that's, the 2.2 that was included last week included the merit and the COLA.
That's,
So the 2.2 that you have here includes the
No, it-
4.5 we're talking about?
No.
No, does not.
No.
All right, well, what's the differential?
I don't have that breakdown yet. We're
But
putting,
it doesn't, no, wait a minute. The first line item here is.
I don't have the amount of the 2.2 that is related to the sheriff at this point.
Well, what I guess I would say to you, Sheriff, is that if we gave you 20% of our projected additional revenues, and you look at it and say, my priorities are to match MSP, which I'm not, if you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. I mean, it's up to you.
Right.
My point gets to be is that you make your own priorities as to the amount of money you get, and if it's not enough, then maybe you can come back and say, well, by the way, or if it's enough, then we can just call it a day and move on.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and we'll certainly work to come within that amount, as we've done in the past years, or communicate to the board what additional we may be requesting, if any.
All right, well, 20% of new money is about 2.4.
Have we removed the vehicles from this total product?
This includes the vehicles at the exempt financing cost. So I have the vehicles in here at the total cost. That's,
Well, my first recommendation would be with the fund balance that we have is to remove the vehicles out of the exempt financing, purchase them with fund balance, dropping the overall cost of the operating.
right.
agree.
Right, and that, if you go to page 54 in the package, the vehicles on top of page that are in blue, those represent all the sheriff vehicles, and then below that are for the departments, and the state's attorney also has a vehicle in here. And then if you go over to page 55, And then you have new vehicles that are listed, and those will be included based on whatever positions you have. But the total vehicles, it's like 40 vehicles in all, it's $3.6 million, and that is what you did last year. You used fund balance.
Right.
In
And I
lieu
think
of-
we were up close to that last year on the
You
total.
were about $3 million.
Right, so I mean, just to easily say, you know, I think with the 828 for the exempt financing, what's that, the annual payment, right?
That's the
Yes,
annual
in
payment
total.
for 5 years.
Yeah, I just don't see why we wouldn't use the fund balance to go ahead and take that out, and then we don't have to worry about it affecting the operating.
Right, is that something?
And just as a bit of information, of the $2.2 million request, $350,000 is vehicle exempt financing.
Okay,
So if you were to
Okay,
use,
so that kind of increases it to 2.5, or when you take the two, I mean,
How much was it, 300,000?
it allows it 350 to go towards operating versus, they get more money, more flexibility in using that money.
right, we'll remove the vehicles out, and we can use fund balance. And then
Yes.
that'll reduce their request of the 2.2 by roughly 300,000.
right.
50.
Then I also, you know, I understand this whole MSP argument, but we've been pretty clear that we're trying to treat everybody equal this year, and we agreed last week that everybody's going to get 4.25, which we just emphasized earlier, so I don't think that line on top for the 503 is valid anymore at all. Because we're not playing parity with MSP.
Was 4.5.
Right, and that's,
4.5,
that was to
yeah.
bring them up
4.5.
to the Maryland State Police as of July 1st, 2021.
We're talking
was
about 4.5.
503.
I think we go through this habitual cycle every year. When it comes down to it,
there's-
I would say that we ultimately end up with a flat number, and then the sheriff goes back and does what he does. So rather than going line item by line item, would you be opposed to having just the decisions being made there and assigning a flat number?
I think the easiest thing we've done in the past to make it easier is to assign a flat number and just forget about going line by line. So it becomes, what is the magical number going to be?
Right.
I mean, I really believe if MSP, I'm not interested in codifying it like Charles County has done. But again, if the sheriff determines that's to be his main priority, deal with it.
Then we give him a flat number, and he can figure out if he wants
He deals with it.
planes, trains, or automobiles, or salaries. I don't care.
So can we agree to 2.4? That'd be 20% of our,
No way.
No, no way.
no way.
No way.
How much are you doing?
We were taking the vehicles out,
You're taking the vehicles out.
So if we take the vehicles out,
and then we're,
1.5?
I'm looking more at 1.5 myself.
We're
taking the
taking the
vehicles out.
automobiles out and taking the MSP scale out,
Yes.
that gives them just about everything they wanted.
Right.
The county,
That doesn't give us the ability to retain or recruit new employees. We didn't address this last year. There's a disparity between our salary and Charles. Calvert is trying to close the gap in their salaries. Even if we adjusted our salaries to be comparable with Charles and MSP, that's likely going to change in July. I'm not suggesting that we'd come back, but I think our employees would see that effort by us to refine their salaries and be comparable. I mean, what we're trying to do is stabilize that workforce in the area that we compete in for employees. Even though I think law enforcement now is recruiting in a vacuum, and what I mean by that, we're trying to recruit other cops away from other agencies, and the bulk of our incentives are offered after laterals. So you look at the diminishing numbers of people coming into the profession from outside. So clearly, one of the things that they look at, unlike generations before, is the salary and benefits coming into the profession.
I think what again, to come back is, I don't want to be in the position to say, whether or not the pay raises are going to be there or not. But what I am willing to do is say, the decision ultimately has to be made by the Sheriff's Department as to whether or not they want to allocate that funding towards that pay raise versus other items that are within the budget. So rather than it being said from here, if we give the flat funding, then that decision ultimately is laid on to the Sheriff's Department to choose which direction they want to go, whether it's going to be the pay raises or it's going to be new positions. So, because there's a significant amount of new positions which could fall into that request. So ultimately, I think that might be the best route to go is find that number that's reasonable, and then let them go back.
What's reasonable?
I'm anywhere between 800 to 1.5, but I'm trying to go through and look at these ECCs, and that's just based off the fact that the county administrator recommendation was 724. So that's why I'm starting at that number. I just rounded it up to 800. So that's the only reason I'm there. So I'm just looking at them, and I'm trying to narrow that down myself. Because I do, with the fund balance, there's other items in here that are non-recurring that can be done through any savings that may have been forecasted as well to drop the overall price of the budget.
Yeah, we took the vehicles out here already.
Yeah, but every year we do that. It's do you have any salary savings, anything within the budget that I'm not seeing here that can be pointed out?
Yes.
Well, there's salary.
How much?
1.1 million salary.
It's already in here?
It's built into our budget.
Okay, so it's already built, you've already utilized the
built that
1.1
in
million in this. Okay.
Grow that.
So what items in the budget are already paid for with that 1.1 million? Because it's just showing the total here.
So it's just built into our bottom line. We've already reduced our budget request by 1 million.
That's the salary saving.
savings.
Yeah,
We've
that you
reduced our
do.
salary savings.
It was part of their cost changes.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
It's not a part of these ECCs, the ECCs are over and above what they currently have in their budget. So they did incorporate those salary changes again for FY 2023.
And we eliminated the one-time cost requests, correct?
Right, those
Yes.
came out
Okay,
also.
that's what I was wondering.
Yep.
That's why it looks like when you're on page, I think, 4 or 5, that it looks like their budget actually went down because of the reduction. It looks like it actually was reduced by about $1.6 million, and that's removing the non-recurring, principally the vehicles from last year. Because they were brought the same way you're proposing now, outright, instead of exempt financing.
Well, I mean, Commissioner Morgan, what do you?
So I'd say for right now, all the vehicles at a fund balance in the 1.5 with the option to revisit this later if you all can't make the numbers work to what you need.
And can we get the 1.5 in addition to what you previously approved? I mean, I don't think other departments are including their increases in their requests.
Are you talking salary?
She's talking about the salaries.
The COLA.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
The step in the COLA, I would think that's fair, to say that that's not going to be absorbed. I think has been done traditionally in some aspects, but.
No, definitely the step and COLA we already agreed with.
So
They're going to cross the board
1.5
for
plus
everybody.
step and COLA
4.5
plus
step and
vehicles.
Right.
Correct. So
2%,
you want to go lower
right?
than that then?
No, I think it's fair.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure. Yeah, all right, so I mean, that's fair. If the step in the COLA is pulled out, then the 1.5 makes it that much more easier to absorb what's there. I mean,
Well, let us know, but just so I understand, so we got 12.8 million in new money, and we're going to give them 1.5 of it?
12 point, wasn't there? 12.8?
Isn't that what you said, 12.8 in new money?
That was from the prior week, but I mean, they're going to get,
Plus-
they're
For
getting a
9 something right now.
4.5% pay raise.
No, I get it. I get
They're
it, I
getting
get
the
it.
vehicles. So that, the vehicles.
How much we talking about? 1.5
1.5.
What's the COLA?
Plus their
instead?
share of the vehicles. I
What's the-
don't have the actual amount of the 2.2 is related to them yet. We're calculating that now.
You don't have the 4.5% or whatever the,
They're going to be receiving that out of the 2.2.
No.
I don't have
I think
that.
what we're getting at is that if you do it at 1.5, the total vehicle cost was $396
Right.
on the annual, which would bump you up to 1.9, and then you get to the step in the COLA, which I
Right.
think for the sheriff's department is roughly like 450 to 650, if I remember. How much? 450?
I'm sorry.
I thought you said 450.
No, I was saying, but that, we're not including that in the one, in
Right.
our request.
The
No,
1
not at all. But
Separate.
my point is that we actually get to the number that was
I
put
think
out
you
in the
will,
first place,
after we
is without
add-
it being within your request, is that we're
Exactly.
removing that, we're absorbing it, and then the 1.5 goes into
When we're done with
requirement.
actually adding the vehicles outright, when we're done adding their share of the 2.2 million for the 4.5% plus the 1.5, I think they're going to be there.
It pretty much comes out to the same
I think
number.
so. I think they're
Yeah.
going to be there.
That's what I was getting at. So there's no actually, we're at the number that Commissioner Hewitt
I
was
think
saying.
so.
in the place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we'll
All right.
come back when we receive their 1.5 allocation, and then add that in, and we'll also, like I'm saying, my staff right now is upstairs. We ran the payroll calculations last night, and we're actually including that now and breaking it out by departments and divisions.
And this 1.5 does not include the increase in fuel.
Right, and that is also
Separate.
something, because that's a part of the baseline.
Yeah, fuel's
Right,
separate.
so you're going to be getting a big chunk of that, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's 300.
So if you can
300
bring that
roughly.
back,
think so, yeah.
try to get that maybe, so we can bring it back next week.
So it'd be a different line item. So it'd be for the
Almost
fuel.
400, yeah.
Of the, so we're talking about that, most likely an additional 4, 5, 6, 7, 1.1 to 1.2 on top of the 1.5.
Right, it's $396,000 that I added for fuel.
Okay, yeah,
But in-
so,
well, and you may put that in a contingency.
Well, no, it's actually in your account right
Yeah,
now.
we think you're going to use
Yeah.
it,
yeah.
All right.
So it would be
unfortunately.
above the 2.4 then that was
Yeah.
already spoken
Right,
about.
so we're going to be probably over the 2.4,
okay.
and we'll find out next week.
Well, let's
Okay.
just hope it gets you where you need to go, Sheriff Cameron.
likewise, thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
When you figure all that out, let me know, or let us all know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell.
So we're down to one,
State's Attorney's Office, and the summary's on page 10, and their first request detail begins on page 46, which is the evidence transcription services.
we have,
Good afternoon.
for taking this up.
thank you.
Appreciate you taking up our budget. I think,
Would you pull the microphone to you? Thank you, sir.
I hope it's pretty transparent. I will tell you, this is my 20th year at the State Attorney's Office, and there's a couple of trends I think are reflected in our request over that time and recently. The two biggest to me are the intersection of criminal events and the enormous amount of evidence that is prepared and collected and presented at trial. There are, of course, more law enforcement officers than when I started, more police action. But more importantly, the criminals acting in concert and coordinating their planning and their criminal conduct makes our cases a lot more complicated. There are a lot of reprisals, there are a lot of retaliation, there's a lot of more youthful offenders committing more violent crimes. They're collectively dominating retail-level drug distribution. And those things make our work more complicated, and I think that's reflected in our request. There are no requests for lawyers or requests for people who coordinate the work in the office, who support the lawyers, who bring these cases together. They used to be very distinct. There used to be a district court case was not connected to a circuit court case. A bond hearing in the district court was not necessarily connected to a circuit court action. All of those things now are critical events to getting the case to trial at the end of the game. That's one. Number two, as I say, no case is complete anymore without just an enormous amount of electronic evidence, scientific evidence. If somebody steals a lawnmower from the shed, the police, who are doing great work, collect evidence that you just didn't see. You see DNA evidence and video evidence and The jail creates an enormous amount of evidence between just jail calls and texts and things like that. So all those things have to be collected by our office, by our people, turned over to defense, analyzed, and making the right decisions on these cases, and then ultimately, if necessary, bringing them to court for the most serious cases. So
Have you filled
all of the requests follow that theme. So,
Have you filled the position that we approved last year?
I'm sorry?
Has the state's attorney's office filled the position that we approved last year for the digital evidence?
We have, Commissioner. We hired Mike Butler, who was a detective with the sheriff's office for a long time, a narcotics officer with enormous amount of experience.
Good.
These, now you got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 FTEs. Are these all new FTEs, or are you upgrading certain people?
Sure. So at the same time, recently, the commissioners authorized an analysis of a reclassification of some personnel. So we put in some
So
reclassification.
some of these are reclassifications.
Well, these are not. So these.
None of these are?
I'm sorry. These budgets were put in before the reclasses were opened. So we have a reclass in, which is probably redundant to this. So-
And the reclasses will come back next week.
So is criminal investigator
So those three legal.
manager, is he that's a new position?
It is. So the legal coordinators are probably redundant to the reclassifications that the commissioners just authorized. So I guess it'd be one or the other there.
Yeah.
Evidence analyst that we filled last year does circuit court work. We're in great need of one for the district court. And I'm sorry, your question, Commissioner Guy. Does that answer your question, sir?
So
Well, yeah, I thought it was an existing position, and you're just upgrading
No,
it.
these are actually 7 new positions.
So if we reclassify senior legal coordinators, we don't need these 3 new positions here.
Well, we would get by with the reclassification. That's correct. I mean, my job is to tell you what I think we need to get.
Do you
our
have,
cases to.
how many vacancies are in the state's attorney's office right now?
You have 4 right this minute.
Okay, I was told 6, but I
Well,
wanted
we
to hear
have one
from.
coming on board. Our fiscal coordinator just left, so
Okay.
that's being replaced, and I say Butler.
So you presently have four vacancies.
We are, and we're in the process of interviewing and hiring, and I think it's like everything in our field of work. We lose people to higher paying jobs. I don't think it's been a while since anybody left I've never heard of anybody leaving for a lateral job as long as I've been there. Our fiscal person went to PAX, and you gain an experience that's valuable to a lot of people. Sometimes on the defense side, sometimes in allied agencies. So,
How many people work over there?
boy, I'll have to.
I mean, 25, 15,
Oh, it's close to 40.
It's about,
40?
state's attorney, you've got about 44 right now. 44.
The request for the criminal investigations manager, we had another request that came across for a similar position for a pay raise, which was ultimately denied. So I want to make sure that this position is not tied to that position, because the numbers are strikingly similar.
Well, this position's at 75,000.
It's 121.
That's loaded. That's for everything? That's for benefits?
And everything else.
Yes,
Fringe
sir.
and everything, right?
So the evidence analyst is at 52, and the criminal investigators is 75.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure. Perfect, thank you.
Interesting.
There's a lot of questions about that one, that particular position.
I understand.
This replacement vehicle, it says it's not recommended by DPW.
That was based on the years and the mileage.
Okay.
You're saying not recommended? I thought that it was recommended.
DPW, the replacement vehicle was not recommended.
Oh, okay. All
Well.
right. We would follow their guidelines. We thought we were following their guidelines.
Okay.
Oh,
We're certainly not
so we remove that.
second guessing them.
So is this an additional fiscal coordinator to the one fiscal coordinator that just left that's being filled?
It is, so we're getting a new fiscal person to run the fiscal operations of the office. What I'm looking for here is somebody to assist us in criminal asset forfeitures, grant applications and identifications. The way governments are spending money now is pretty targeted grant money. I think other agencies are better at getting those than we are. We need to improve that. We have 3 significant grants that we go after now. I was originally hired on a grant 20 years ago, and I need somebody to take a look at those and secure those. I think that job would pay for itself pretty quickly. Also, the other thing, Commissioner, we need to do better is criminal asset forfeitures in both the district court and the circuit court. For a long time, those were done as part of the criminal case. We like to do those independently. There was a time when the county attorney did them. We took that back, and we're going to improve how we do that. The last piece there that's pretty critical, restitution used to be a function of probation. Some changes out of Annapolis make that extremely difficult to collect restitution after they are sentenced, almost impossible. There's no sanction for not paying your restitution, so we're collecting a lot of that before the sentences, or before any resolution of the case is made. So that would be the function of this person. Again, their salary is $58,000. I'm confident it would pay for itself very quickly.
So you'd go from 44 employees to 51 if you got everybody.
That's correct. It would, last year we added one. I don't think through the years we've added many people. And again, my job is to tell you what I think that we need.
That's a 15% increase, though,
It is.
in bureaucracy and
Over the last 5 years, I'm sure law enforcement personnel's up considerably more than that, creating more cases, more, and again, it's a zero-sum game, and I get it. I get that we're competing for scarce dollars, and I don't mean to be glib about it, but we have not come each of these years when law enforcement has increased their numbers and their resources and kept up with them, and it's now catching up with us. That's one. But two, so the kinds of cases we're getting in these courts, everybody's seeing it. I don't want to have a political discussion, but Annapolis seems every day to make our life harder and criminals' life easier, and we're keeping up. So that's what this reflects. And again, if we're able to do the reclassifications and get some of these legal assistants in supervisory roles and mentoring roles and guidance roles, well, then our request goes to 4, which is certainly reasonable. When we put this in, we didn't have a reclassification system open to us. So we'd certainly be happy with whichever way the commissioners see fit in that regard.
I just think it's awfully high, personally.
I agree.
All right, well, let's just go down the list here. I'm good with the $25,000 that the county administrator recommends for the evidence transcription services.
Yeah, for me, that's all I'm with the county administrator recommended budget.
Yeah, I'd remove the vehicle and those senior legal coordinators if we can handle that through reclassification instead
Well, we
of-
haven't seen what the reclasses are, right? So we'll get that next week. You might have already seen them. I haven't seen them. So we'll know more about those, what's being recommended.
Okay.
And we can definitely double check with HR to see.
That's reasonable. I mean, it's hard to, without seeing how the reclasses are being described, and knowing that, as we have described with the sheriff and with the Board of Ed, once the check leaves, we have no control over what goes on in each elected official's offices. So we're sort of at the mercy today, no pun intended, with the courts, that we're looking to have extra people added, and they're going to come in with reclassification, and the check gets sent over, and then, we have no control over it. I mean, we have a little bit of control still over the Board of Ed with the moving categories. But the sheriff, once he gets his check, he can do what he wants. Once the state's attorney gets his check, he can do what he wants. And in our
get the
position, we
blame.
still have to be judicious and overlooking and then expecting, that the offices are going to do what they reported they're going to do. Once the check's away, there's nothing we can do. So I'd like to see how the reclassifications are going to be addressed before I would sit there and say, yeah, we'll just add 7 more people, and the reclassification comes in and 10 people are getting reclassified up, and then you're sort of cut with a double whammy.
All right, so there's only 3 reclassifications. That's certainly a valid point. 3 reclassifications are specifically the senior legal assistants. So, like I said, no lawyers, no investigators, just the people who do the job every day.
And are the lawyers over there working full-time, all of them?
They are. And they're career people. Some of them,
Are any due to retire? You should have some older gents over there, I believe.
Well, people make their own decisions when they retire, Commissioner. I mean, I don't know specifically people's intentions, but I do know you have people who've been prosecutors for a long, long time, and there's other agencies right near us in Charles and Calvert, Prince George's, where you go in there for 2 or 3 or 5 years. The next thing you know, all you're doing is learning skills to be a defense attorney. And one of the reasons I like to think our community is pretty safe is our sheriff's officers come here and stay, our prosecutors come here and stay, our judges. That's a valuable resource. So,
Okay, thank you.
but there are no reclassifications for anybody besides what I would consider a corporal, equivalent of a corporal. People who've been legal assistants for a long time and want to teach new people, are able to teach new people. So we're doing the things the same way. And those pay rates are $52,000. I mean, that's a reasonable number for somebody who's been doing that kind of work for the number of years that it would take to have that position. So
Okay.
appreciate you taking over as a reconsideration or as a position. And to the extent it's duplicative, that's my fault. Again, the budget was due before the reclassification window was open.
Well, it came at the same time, so that's understandable. My understanding from HR is that the reclasses have been approved, year 3,
Okay?
so.
Good.
If that's the case, I would just tell you
The
now
4.
that to make it 4 FTEs and to remove the FTEs then for that. And I appreciate that, Mr. Weisgrove, or at least that information as well.
No.
Any more thoughts, Commissioners, on this?
No.
So the 3 reclasses would take care of the 3 senior legal coordinators? Is that right? Yes, sir.
Right, so that would come off.
Well, what do you guys want to do?
I went with the county administrators recommended.
Just to 25,000?
Yes.
Mr. Colvin?
I'm thinking. What's the operations manager for? I guess we didn't ask about that one.
So when I started, a district court case was very distinct from a circuit court case, and they're not now. These significant criminals are being arraigned in bond hearings and preliminary hearings in the district court for those operations. This person would oversee what happens in the district court, make sure the right cases are brought over, make sure that they're brought over in a timely fashion, and make sure that they're coordinated with other associated cases. So
Who does that now?
to a large extent, I do that now. It's my role as the supervisor of these cases, but there's a tremendous amount of them, and there are a lot of connections to them, and it requires some staff support to do it as well, to get those materials together, get the case put together in the district court and brought over to the circuit court.
So that takes you away from trying cases?
It does. I have a full.
And we just had a judge sit here and tell us how much his cases have increased over the last year.
Right.
I'm assuming that your cases have increased right along with his.
They are, and the thing to remember, and as the judge explained, it may just be one case, but it now has 10 appearances. It has a very significant bond hearing, it's a very significant preliminary hearing. We're stuck with those results when we get the case over circuit court. The time constraints are on us. The collection of evidence in the district court can't wait like it used to wait. So that entire major case starts from day one, where it used to be we had some more time to resolve it and put it together. And more of them are connected. There's more retaliation going out there. There's more coordinated criminal events. Sometimes it's a sheriff's office case connected to the state police case, connected to a Calvert County case. We have a significant number of those where there's one criminal event in Calvert County that's connected to one in St. Mary's County. Or we have, defense was in court today where the county police did an excellent job, state police did an excellent job. Somebody has to put those together. And I don't want to suggest that any police officer won't do whatever we ask them to do. But a lot of these require us to independently put these things together and coordinate these cases. That's what all of the theme of these FTEs are. us do that. So you're right, I do that, it takes away from
Well, my point of view is if you know, somebody can run the paperwork and the other individual can actually be prosecuting the cases. I have no trouble with somebody doing the paperwork to get the thing coordinated so that the lawyers can be actually trying cases.
I agree. Yeah.
So I could see, as Commissioner O'Connor said, the evidence transcription services, I can agree to an operations manager, and that's about it.
Fair enough, then.
I'm leaning towards a 3, electronic evidence analysis, fiscal coordinator, and operations manager.
I'd say go, give them the reclass,
That's 3
which
right
we've
there.
already given them.
And then look at the reclass, that'll, I mean, I don't know, things have definitely increased. Just looks to the judge how much his cases have increased, and
Yeah, the
you
thing
know, he
is-
asked these deputies only do so much, and I'm inclined to run those 3.
Which ones?
Electronic evidence analysis, I think you know as well as I do, you're a computer whiz. I mean, electronic stuff has gotten to be very big. As far as you need somebody that can specialize and analyze that. Fiscal contributor and coordinator and the operations manager.
So I guess, Mr. White,
Hold on, wait, Commissioner Hewitt was going to say something.
Go with, I would go with the 25, the county administrator. Just go with a total of 250. He can pick up 2 positions out of the 4 that's there and let him pick which ones he needs the most.
well, I guess my question would be, I mean, we had the sheriff here, we had the judge here, and the county treasurer was here before. But it sounds like you're the one who put together this budget, and you're the one here presenting. Does the state's attorney, Mr. Fritz, what would his priority be for any of these?
I think we,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
No, I'm sorry. You can answer Commissioner Colvitt's question after he's done. Sorry.
So I think we put these in the order that they're important to us, that they're most critical to us, and that's what we try to do. We'll just ask you to give some consideration, Commissioner O'Connor, to the evidence analyst. That's a position we asked for last year. We asked for 2, 1 for each court, and we got 1, and grateful for that. But I got to tell you, in that district court, every case it is a tidal wave, as Judge Tom describes it. It is thousands of cases that used to be a police report and are now video recordings and jail calls and body cameras and car cameras, and the state police are bringing theirs on. And there's no such thing in the district court as, well, it's just a dry while suspended, we're not going to bother to get the car camera. That's just not allowed in any court. We wouldn't do it if it was allowed, but it's just not acceptable to our judges, nor should it be. Oh, this case isn't that important, so we just didn't bother to collect all that evidence and turn it over to the defense.
I don't think every case is
Well,
important.
I think that might be a misstatement that it's not acceptable anywhere, because I can tell you, I was in traffic court not too long ago for several must appears, and body camera wasn't required. So unless there's a different procedure here, it's just officer's testimony and that's it. So I think maybe it's a policy here for how they're doing it, but or maybe it's the policy up there.
Well, I can tell you, our judges require, if
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, the judges here require it. Yeah, so
they do consider it a statement of the defendant. And the rules say that if the defendant makes a statement to the police, that we're required to turn it over. Doesn't matter what we think about or how important we think it is, make one. We're required to collect and turn it over to them.
Well, I have to agree with Commissioner Hewitt then. I mean,
Yeah, I
you know,
would concur with Commissioner, 250.
250, which includes
out.
the 25, you figure it out.
And the reclasses would come back next week, is that?
Yes, and that would not be a part, I don't think the reclasses are a part of it. That's something separate. So 250 amongst,
Is it 250 plus the 25 for the
250
transcription?
including the
Yeah,
20.
that would
yeah,
include the
including-
25.
So the 25 is mandated in that 250,
Yeah.
not optional.
So, right.
Everybody agrees with?
Yeah, I think.
250,000?
And if you can
Okay.
just email me
Sure.
your request is for 2.
Look at that, then the reclassifies you're getting, so let's see what we come up with.
Commissioners, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Weisman.
All righty, Commissioners, I think we've received all the direction we need today.
Very good.
So let me recap. Court the 1,000. Circuit Court, the full 83,809. Sheriff, 1.5 million. And that's just purely their items that they've listed, because we're going to do the vehicles at a fund balance. They're going to get the fuel. They're going to get their share of the 2.2 or the 4.5%. And then State's Attorney will get 250,000. And they'll come back, so I'll be expecting an
Plus
email.
they get their reclasses.
Right, and the reclasses, that'll come back next week. I think the last I had talked to HR with about $158,000
Okay.
for the reclasses. And we'll know more. It'll be part of next week's package. So.
Any other direction you need? Is that
I
all
think
you
we
need?
do. I
All
think
right.
we do, and I appreciate it. Do you have any further questions, or if not, we will see you next week.
Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, Commissioners? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.